It's shortly after 1 pm on October 22nd, 2012. Venkat Shiva Konda Venna returns home for lunch to a 6th floor apartment at the Marquee complex. He expects to find his 10-month-old daughter, Saanvi, giggling in her grandmother's arms. Instead, he steps into a nightmare. The story I have for you today is one that shook two nations, a tale of innocence lost, of a community betrayed from within, and of a crime so heinous it's hard to believe it really happened.
And tied her around her neck to this place.
This story takes us from a quiet apartment complex in Pennsylvania to the heart of India, from the joy of a newborn smile to the horror of an unimaginable act. This is the story of Raghunandan Yandamuri, an aspiring techie, a doting friend, and the first Indian American on death row. Hi everyone, welcome to the Desi Crime Podcast, a show where we dive deep into some of the craziest cases from around South Asia. I'm your host Aryaan.
And I'm Aishwarya.
And the case that I have for you today talks about the first Indian American on death row and what he did to get there.
Aryaan never even crossed my mind. It's one
Yeah.
of those things that obviously exists, but never crosses your mind. You pay no attention to this thought in your life that there must be an Indian on death row somewhere in the US.
And with that same thought, I was like, I want to find a case about this story. And I found this one. And it is one of the most unbelievable crime stories in terms of human motivations that I came across.
And is it kind of like an old case? Because I feel like I've never heard about this before.
No, it's from the 2000s. It's a 21st century case.
That's crazy that I know nothing about this despite my crime junkie affiliations. For those of you who are also crazy like that and just can't seem to get enough of Desi crime and would love to have some early access, we are now giving 48-hour early access for free for the month of October for anyone who goes and listens to us on the Amazon Music app.
And it comes free with your Prime membership. So go download the Amazon Music app, search Desi Crime Podcast, and you'll get all episodes 48 hours in advance. And if you're even crazier and want more, you know what's that there behind. If you're listening on audio, I'm pointing at the book cutout we have. The Desi Crime book is out now. That also you can buy on Amazon and it'll get shipped faster because of your Prime membership. I wasn't paid to say that, but it just makes sense. So I'm saying it right now. But with that, on with the case for today. Imagine this, October 2012, a suburban Philadelphia community bustling with immigrant dreams. The Venna family, young IT professionals from India, are living the American dream in a town called King of Prussia in Pennsylvania.
Just a weird little side note, I've actually visited King of Prussia.
I was like, what is that name?
Yeah, my cousin lives close by there in Philadelphia and she took me there. Now, the US doesn't have huge mall culture, but the King of Prussia Mall, I think, is one of the largest malls in the United States. And it's this maddening scape of like every possible store you can ever think of, luxury, non-luxury and everything in between, giant candy stores. Like, it's crazy.
I thought it was a made-up town.
It's
and
King of Prussia Mall. Shout out.
Now, the Venna family's 10-month-old daughter, Saanvi, has just learned to crawl. The grandparents are visiting from India, filling the home with the aroma of homemade food and the melody of Telugu lullabies. It's a picture of warmth and love. And now, imagine that dream shattering into a nightmare. It's just past noon on October 22nd, 2012. Venkat Shiva Venna pushes open the door to his apartment, expecting to find his mother, Satyavathi, cradling baby Saanvi after lunch. He's only been gone a few hours. Instead, he steps into a scene of chaos and blood. His mother is on the kitchen floor in a pool of red. She's not breathing. And baby Saanvi is gone. In panic, Shiva cries out for his wife, Lata, Lata, even though he knows she's at work. Trembling, he fumbles his phone to dial 911. In those blurred moments of horror, he spots something on the floor. Scattered papers. 10 identical pages strewn about. He picks one up with shaking hands and reads a message that makes his blood run cold. Shiva, your daughter has been kidnapped. If you report this to cops, your daughter will be cut into pieces and found dead. By 8 p.m. today, Lata alone should get $50,000 cash and come to Baha Fresh at the Acme Store complex. It's a ransom note, and it uses his and his wife's nicknames, Shiva and Lata. Only their closest friends call them that. In that instant, Venkat Venna's world falls apart. His mother isn't moving. His baby girl is in the hands of a killer, or so the note threatens. He realizes that this was no random break-in. It feels personal. Someone out there has targeted them. Police sirens soon wail into the complex. Detectives swarm the scene. The marquee apartment in Upper Merion Township, ordinarily a quiet enclave for young families and professionals. Yellow crime tape goes up. Neighbors peek out from behind curtains, terrified by the commotion. Within hours, an amber alert flashes across Pennsylvania. 10-month-old Saanvi Venna missing, possibly abducted. Aishwarya, now, can you tell the listeners what the Amber Alert is?
Yeah, so it's basically this centralized system where your phone gets a notification during an abduction case, where there'll be a description of the person that's gone missing. There'll be a description of if there is any suspect, like a car that the kid was seen in. And it was started after the abduction of a young girl, Amber, and in her honor, it's called the Amber Alert, and kind of flashes across all iPhones at the same time.
If you're in the US, your phone will be going off randomly for any child abduction case. And so in this case, it was blurting her name. For 4 days, hope and dread war in the hearts of everyone searching for Saanvi. Law enforcement and volunteers work around the clock. Flyers with Saanvi's big-eyed photo go up on lampposts and shop windows. Temple and community center parking lots turn into search party headquarters. The local Telugu Association offers a reward. Bring Saanvi back, the posters plead. At candlelight vigils, families pray and cry, clinging to optimism. And among these distraught volunteers is a familiar face, Raghunandan Yandamuri. He's a 26-year-old family friend of the Vennas, a fellow immigrant from Andhra Pradesh living just down the hall from them. Raghu joins the search, passing out flyers, patting Shiva on the back, telling him to, quote, stay strong. He even visits Venna's apartment to console them, all while little Saanvi is still missing. Raghu is a Samaritan in good standing with the Telugu society there and a close friend of the Vennas. But because he lives in that same apartment complex, the police might hope that he may share some information, but he has nothing to offer. But what the police does have is one major clue. The ransom note. The wording suggested the culprit knew the family. Those nicknames, Lata and Shiva, were like a neon sign pointing to an insider. Investigators quietly asked the Vennas, who calls you by these names? A short list forms, and sure enough, one of the names on it is Raghunandan Yandamuri. Detectives run a check on Raghu. Clean record, tech job, married, nothing jumps out. Except one thing. Raghu has a gambling problem. Word in the community is he often goes to the Valley Forge Casino.
Welcome to Valley Forge Casino Resort by Boyd. Welcome to where you want to be.
In fact, on October 25th, with Saanvi still missing, police learned that Raghu is at the casino right now, seemingly unfazed by the ongoing search.
Aryaan, I think all us young people, we have vices, right?
Yes.
Some of us are addicted to nicotine. Some have a certain penchant for alcohol.
Some like their gambling.
That's what I was going to ask. So I've never gambled ever before in my life. And to me, something that's not a physical substance in your body, an addiction to that just seems a little bit hard for me to wrap my mind. I know it's a very real phenomena with devastating consequences, but I just can't understand an impulse to something that is not injected or consumed in your body.
I will tell you.
Explain it.
I'll tell you, gambling is as much a substance addiction as any other substance addiction because of the substance called adrenaline and endorphin.
Sure.
That's the high you get in a casino. I love gambling in casinos and teen patti parties, and I often lose a lot of money. And so I refrain from going to casinos and all. It's a cognizant decision because I know once I start playing, I will lose all the sponsor money we make. But yes, it's very real. And if you are doing it from a place of addiction, not as fun, addiction, things can go bad real quick.
I was recently actually reading a Reddit story about a man who did not tell his wife and put up his children's college funds up on gamble. He won But his wife was livid. So the Reddit post was asking, is she fair in being livid? I won. I doubled the college fund. So these stories just make me realize, wow.
Maybe small note before I go on with the story. I think the wife is completely justified because he might have won that one time.
Yeah.
But that'll only propel him to bet bigger next time. And the house always wins. Eventually, he's going to lose all that money.
Right.
Now, it's the afternoon of October 25th, 2012. Plainclothes officers walk onto the casino floor. They spot Raghu at a slot machine, perhaps hoping to recoup some of the $15,000 he'd lost over recent weeks. Gently, they tap him on the shoulder. Sir, can you step outside? We need your help with the Saanvi investigation. Raghu's heart must have skipped a beat, but outwardly he stays calm. Sure, he says. After all, why would an innocent neighbor refuse to help find his friend's baby? He doesn't know it, but the trap is closing. At the Upper Merion police station, detectives Bradbury and Rathfun lead Raghu Yandamuri into a quiet interview room. It's still October 25th. They offer him water, tell him he isn't under arrest and that he's free to leave anytime. This is a strategic dance. They want Raghu to keep talking without a lawyer, so they avoid making it custodial. And for what it's worth, we were able to find the footage of this interrogation and will be using it across this episode. Now, hours tick by and the conversation starts casual. Quote, how well did you know the Vena family? When did you last see Saanvi? Raghu answers every question smoothly. He says he was at work Monday when it happened, only came home when he heard the sirens. He denies any involvement. Of course, he was just a concerned friend. Detectives note his demeanor. Cooperative, maybe a bit too slick. They ask him to consent to a search of his phone and car, and he agrees. He even lets them photograph a small cut on his finger. Quote, how do you get that cut, Raghu? He casually explains he scratched it cleaning his car trunk the night after Saanvi went missing. But as midnight approaches, Raghu's story starts developing cracks. Unbeknownst to him, police have spoken to his wife, who is pregnant and worried sick about him being at the station so long. She contradicts his alibi. She tells detectives, quote, Raghu never came home for lunch that day, and I don't recall him having any cut on his finger then, end quote.
Aryaan, quick question for clarification. Do we know if Saanvi's grandmother, the one who was found in the pool in the home, has she died? Is she alive? And if she is dead, how did she die?
Yeah.
Because that might help explain this cut on his hand based on like the mode of killing.
Correct. Saanvi's grandmother was dead. She was dead when they arrived on scene. She was initially unconscious, but attempts to resuscitate her were unsuccessful. And I'm going to get into how exactly she died. But yes, she was dead on scene. The testimonies vary. One says he was back home for lunch. The other says he did not come home for lunch at all. Raghu has been caught in a lie. It's now nearly 11 p.m. on October 25th. The interrogation, which has been friendly enough, takes a turn. Detective Bradbury leans forward and for the first time reads Raghu his Miranda rights. This is a pivotal moment. You see, Raghu's free to leave card is now effectively gone because his Miranda rights have been read, though the cops still say he's not under arrest. Raghu waives his rights and keeps talking, perhaps thinking he can outsmart the cops. Bradbury decides it's time to crack this. He plays a bold card. He places his hand on a Bible and swears, quote, on my parents' grave that Raghu's wife is telling the truth and that he, Raghu, is lying. Then the detective pulls out a photo, a smiling picture of baby Saanvi, those big brown eyes now haunting from the page. After hours of interrogation, the cool, calm Raghu finally cracks. He starts to cry. His voice trembles. Call my wife, please, just tell her I'm okay, he pleads. The detectives oblige. A quick call is made so Anupama knows Raghu is safe. For now. When Bradbury returns, he speaks softly. Quote, Raghu, we need to find that baby. It's been days. Her parents are suffering. Tell us what happened. It's time. There's a long silence. Then Raghu Yandamuri, in a low voice, says, give me a pen and paper. Under the fluorescent lights of that little room, Raghu begins to write. Line by line, at 4:12 a.m. on October 26, 2012, his confession pours. It's a chilling, matter-of-fact account. He writes how he had been drowning in debt from gambling. How at a neighbor's birthday party 2 days before the murder, he noticed baby Saanvi's tiny gold bangles and heard Lata mention she'd returned to work, both parents working, so maybe they have money, he thought. In Raghu's mind, a plan formed. kidnap the baby, demand ransom. He even printed out 10 copies of a ransom note on his office computer ahead of time. 10 copies, perhaps to scatter around and mislead investigators. On Monday, October 22nd, around 11:30 am, Raghu took an early lunch from his job. He pulled on a black hoodie and sunglasses, armed himself with a 4-inch kitchen knife, and walked over to the Venna apartment in the same complex. Inside, Satyavathi was feeding her granddaughter. She answered the door, surprised to see Raghu at that hour. He forced his way in, flashing the knife and demanding Saanvi. One can only imagine the terror in that grandmother's eyes. A trusted family friend was now a threat. Satyavathi screamed and resisted, trying to shut the door or perhaps push him out. But Raghu was determined. He grabbed little Saanvi from the high chair where she was, and that's when Satyavathi fought him with all her might. Raghu's written confession claims, quote, "She lunged at me and I fell back, accidentally slicing her neck." But the brutal reality was far more deliberate. It was no accident. Satyavathi's throat was slashed so deeply the knife hit her spine. As she fell, he stabbed her repeatedly in the chest to silence her. This strong 61-year-old woman, fueled by adrenaline, still tried to claw at him. Defensive wounds later showed she nearly lost her fingers trying to grab the blade. Within moments, her struggle ended. Satyavathi lay bleeding on that kitchen floor.
Aryaan, the fact that he's saying it was an accident that he stabbed her, firstly, what a jarring, gut-wrenching stabbing this is. To just call it a stabbing doesn't do justice.
To understand how deep it needs to be to hit the spine that's maddening. Accidents, that's not what accidents look like.
It's not. And I think why this absolutely cannot be an accident is because he's just walked in as himself. Yeah. And revealed himself to
Of course,
her.
He doesn't want the grandmother to be alive.
Of course, it's not like he would have left her alive if she didn't resist. He would have killed her anyway. So this is all a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, it is. And the fact that he's saying this is an accident is something he's going to stick with for a while, and you'll see how he plays with it. Baby Saanvi, now in Raghu's arms, began crying hysterically. Obviously, she had just witnessed her beloved Ammamma being attacked. Raghu panicked. He hadn't meant to kill anyone, he insisted later. But now he had a screaming infant and a dead body. He fished a handkerchief from his pocket and shoved it into the baby's tiny mouth, stifling the cries. But the child was still crying and making sounds. So he grabbed a small bath towel and wrapped it tightly around Saanvi's face to hold the gag in. The crying stopped, muffled. How terrifying must that silence have been? Raghu then scooped up some of the Venna family's valuables, gold jewelry that Lata had talked about at the party. Off Satyavati's limp wrists, he tugged her bangles. From a bedroom, he took any gold he saw. He found a blue suitcase in a closet, laid the now unconscious baby inside, almost as if she were just another object he was stealing, and placed the jewelry beside her. Then Raghu did something particularly cold. He scattered those 10 threatening ransom notes around the apartment floor, effectively littering the scene with evidence of his plan. Satisfied, he zipped up the suitcase with baby Saanvi sealed in it and fled out a back fire escape with the suitcase. Now, picture this. A grown man hurrying through an apartment complex with a small suitcase. Inside, a 10-month-old baby is gagged and bound. No one saw him as he made his escape in broad daylight. He went down to the basement gym of a neighboring building and opened the door to the men's locker room and sauna area. It was unused at that time. There, Raghu slid the suitcase under a bench in the sauna, essentially hiding baby Saanvi like a piece of luggage in a dark, sweltering box. At this point, Raghu must have been thinking only of saving himself. He left Saanvi there, alive but in grave danger, and rushed home to his own apartment.
What?
Aishwarya, a sauna reaches 200 degrees Fahrenheit.
I can't even. I don't know if you know this, Aryaan, but you know this, that I have perpetually resting heart, a very high resting heart rate. And the one thing that really triggers it, it makes you want to cry, is a sauna room. It makes me so anxious. It makes me feel like I'm gonna faint. It makes me panic. It makes me want to rush out. If I'm ever in one of those saunas where I get locked in and someone else needs to open it, I really start hyperventilating. It drives me crazy. I can't even imagine how horrible this is.
Imagine being inside a locked sauna, and then imagine being inside a locked suitcase inside
where
the
you're
sauna.
bound and gagged and you're 10 months old. That's
this one of the worst one of the worst things
Absolutely.
somebody can do.
Absolutely.
And I would rather I would rather you be a psychopath who doesn't feel anything doing this
Then be this.
than be a normal person with a kid coming, your own kid coming, your wife's pregnant, and
Yeah.
you're doing this to pay off gambling debts. For
That
it to
is
be a
horrible.
profit-driven crime, and it's something that the jury will also
And
reflect
there are
on.
profit-driven crimes that we as society are you've stolen money in the dead of the night.
Yeah.
Like you've gone into the home.
You're a
You
thief.
didn't have to do this to the baby. It's like he's gotten scared. Like he killed the grandmother, and then he's like, "Holy crap! Ransom out of
Yeah.
the way. Like I can't go through with this."
I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know how this was ever going to go through.
That's so horrible. I have no idea what that feels like.
Once he reached his apartment, he washed up, scrubbing off Satyavati's blood, and changed clothes. He took the knife and the hoodie and shoved them in a big trash bag, which he carried with him. Adrenaline surging, Raghu drove a short distance to another apartment complex, Lafayette at Valley Forge, and tossed the bag into a dumpster. The evidence disappeared with the next trash pickup, never to be recovered. Perhaps Raghu breathed a sigh of relief, thinking he'd covered his tracks. In his confession, Raghu claimed he actually returned to check on Saanvi after a while, bringing a bottle of milk for her. He says when he opened the sauna, he found her unconscious and limp.
I opened the suitcase and I took the Saanvi out of the suitcase. By the time I saw her, she's unconscious.
She was unconscious.
I splashed some water on her face, but she did not move.
But for all intent and purposes, Saanvi was dead. Saanvi had boiled to her death in that sauna, and whether this man brought milk or not, it doesn't matter. Whether his feeble attempt to show he cared works doesn't matter. Clearly, he did not. And regardless, by then it was too late. Baby Saanvi likely died within minutes to an hour of being gagged. An infant's airway is so small and a tight gag is deadly. When Raghu saw she was dead, he told the police, quote, "I panicked." He left her body hidden there and walked away. Meanwhile, imagine Lata Vena arriving at the Baha Fresh restaurant at 8 p.m. on October 22nd, desperate to hand $50,000 to a kidnapper who never shows up. That's the cruel irony. There was never a chance for ransom, never a hope of getting Saanvi back alive. Not after what Raghu had done only hours after taking her. By the time Raghu finished writing his confession in the pre-dawn hours of October 26th, Detective Bradbury had one more request. Quote, "Will you show us on video what you just described?" And Raghu agreed. So they rolled camera as he reenacted the crime calmly.
Okay, let's stop there. And why don't we demonstrate the beginning part? And here, this is a plastic knife. Okay, it won't hurt. Okay. So Detective Rathon is going to act like the grandmother. Okay, so stand up for us, and we'll come over here.
Using a plastic knife to demonstrate how he accidentally slit Satyavati's throat. In the video, Raghu speaks almost matter-of-factly at times, even using the present tense. Quote, "I pick up the baby, she's crying. I put the hanky in her mouth," as if reliving this in real time.
As she's crying, I tried to stop her crying, like putting a kerchief on her mouth.
You put a handkerchief on her mouth, and where did that handkerchief come from?
It's from my pocket.
He expresses some remorse, but insists the stabbing was an accident. That video would later seal his fate in court. After spilling these dark secrets, Raghu's first request is to talk to his wife. They bring Anupama in. One can only imagine what the conversation was. A young pregnant wife seeing her husband in custody, learning he has confessed to murdering a baby and an elderly woman that they called family. Did he apologize to her? Did she scream at him? We don't know. But we do know what Raghu did right after that short reunion. Something completely unexpected. As officers led him to a holding cell, Raghu suddenly blurted, quote, "It wasn't me. There were two other guys, two white guys. They forced me to do it." Detective Bradbury, caught off guard, simply walked away. It seemed Raghu had realized the magnitude of what he'd confessed and within minutes tried to backpedal and cast blame elsewhere. Over the next days from jail, Raghu doubled down on this bizarre claim. He called Detective Bradbury on October 29th and said, "Actually, I don't know their names, but let's call them Matt and Josh. They had guns. They knew my apartment. They threatened my wife. They did the crime. Not me." He even wrote a 24-page letter weaving a tale about these imaginary kidnappers. In that letter, he inconsistently describes one man as tall and bald named Matt, and another one with golden hair, but no mention of Josh after the first phone call notably. It was a frantic, implausible fabrication. And it would resurface at trial, damaging whatever little credibility he had left, if any. When news broke that Saanvi's body was found and an arrest had been made, the community's grief was indescribable. On October 26, 2012, police announced they'd found Saanvi deceased, hidden in a basement sauna, and that a suspect, described as a family friend and neighbor, had confessed. Many couldn't believe it until they heard the name, Raghunandan Yandamuri.
At 4:30 this morning, the body of Saanvi was found hidden inside of a sauna in a basement bathroom in the gymnasium of one of the marquee apartment buildings. We are also here right now to announce the arrest of her killer and her grandmother's killer, Raghunandan Yandamuri.
Shock, betrayal, anger, especially among the Indian diaspora who had trusted Raghu, all bubbled over. At a vigil-turned-memorial that weekend, Saanvi's father Venkat, with tears in his eyes, told the crowd, quote, "Do not lose your hearts. People are good." Even in his darkest moment, he urged everyone not to let this one evil destroy their faith in humanity. That is grace beyond words.
And I really respect that sentiment coming from someone who has just undergone a horrific tragedy. But this is the second case we are covering where a gambling addiction has caused a very close loved one to commit
What's the other
kidnapping
one?
turned wrong. It's the other case in the book, you guys, that hasn't come out ever on the Desi Crime podcast and will not. It will always remain a book exclusive episode. It makes me I know he's asking me to retain my humanity, indirectly, all of us, but it just makes me feel thankful I don't have people in my circle who might experience the circumstances.
Yeah.
It makes me want to keep an eye out. It makes me want to tell all of you to keep an eye out for people who are putting themselves voluntarily in these dire circumstances, monetary circumstances.
Honestly, Aishwarya, voluntary circumstances, whether we get into addiction or not.
Right.
Although
Voluntary,
gambling
you know what I'm saying.
addiction is more voluntary than most other forms of
It's not
addiction,
quite a
I would
heroin
say.
addiction.
But I don't even think that's relevant. I know gambling addicts. I know people in my extended family that have lost everything to their addictions. Their families have lost anything.
But they're perfectly good people.
They're good people
Yeah.
that haven't killed.
Yeah.
They could have committed crimes, but they
Sure.
haven't. To me, that's the voluntary aspect of. To me, that's what removes any humanity Raghu might have possessed.
100%.
You stole from their house. You broke into their house. Sure, you're an idiot. You're not an evil person.
Of course, the blame is not on gambling.
It is difficult for me to humanize this criminal and to humanize his intentions. There is no long sorted trauma that I can attribute. To me, this is just a person who has no control over his nervous system, a coward. To me, this is a coward.
Even in the story we covered in the book, this is a child that was burnt alive on a highway stretch in Mumbai. It's all so tragic. I think to me, as someone who's not a part of the gambling world, it's just one after another, two cases from this world, which makes sense that they led to kidnapping, unfortunately, and those kidnappings ended badly.
Fast forward to 2 years to September 2014. We are in a courthouse in Norristown, Pennsylvania. Raghunandan Yandamuri, now 28, is about to stand trial for 2 counts of first-degree murder. The case is a media magnet. After all, it involves a murdered infant, an immigrant defendant, and the death penalty. But the trial gains another layer of drama when Raghu decides to do something bold. He fired his lawyers and represents himself. Yes, you heard that right. Despite facing the possibility of execution, Raghu tells Judge Stephen O'Neill that he will be his own attorney. He had a legal team ready to fight for his life, but Raghu, perhaps convinced by his intellect or fueled by narcissism, believes no one can defend him better than himself. The judge strongly cautions him, even appoints standby counsel Stephen Heckman to assist, but ultimately allows Raghu to exercise his right to self-representation. Now the stage is set. The prosecution led by Montgomery County DA's office lays out a straightforward narrative. Raghunandan Yandamuri planned a kidnapping for ransom to pay off gambling debts and in the process brutally killed a grandmother and the baby. They have physical evidence, they have witnesses, and boy do they have a confession. The defense is Raghu himself. And his strategy seems to be claim the confession was coerced and resurrect the wild story of Matt and Josh. During the trial, those attending see a surreal spectacle. There's Raghu, clean cut, speaking politely in his Indian accent, cross-examining the very detectives who extracted his confession. He nitpicks little discrepancies in their reports, trying to suggest they intimidated him. The officers firmly deny any coercion. At one point, Raghu, the lawyer, harps on how long the interrogation lasted and that he was tired, to which Detective Bradbury responds that Raghu was given breaks, food, and was even joking about Indian culture during the night. In essence, the detective testifies, quote, he was treated well, he never asked for a lawyer, he confessed on his own. The jury watches this ping pong, bemused that the defendant is personally sparring with the cops. The most damning moment comes when prosecutors play the video of Raghu's confession. The courtroom sits in silence as the jury sees Raghu on the big screen demonstrating how he did it. It's like an out-of-body experience. Present-day Raghu at the defense table has to watch past Raghu coolly incriminate himself. There's no hint of duress in the video. He even shows a bit of pride in how he arranged the notes and hid the body. This undercuts Raghu's claim that he only confessed under threat. The prosecution methodically calls forensic experts. Dr. Hoyer, the pathologist, describes Satyavati's chopping neck wounds and stab wounds, highlighting the viciousness of the attack. Jurors see autopsy photos. Some jurors wipe tears and one has to look away. The images of tiny Saanvi wrapped in a towel are heart-wrenching. Prosecutors also show evidence of Raghu's motive, records that he was thousands of dollars in debt and maxing out credit cards at casinos nearby. They remind the jury that Raghu stole jewelry off the victims. Even that act speaks to his calculated greed. And crucially, they call Venkat Venna to testify about the nicknames and how only someone close would use Lata and Shiva. It's clear, all arrows point to Raghu. When it's Raghu's turn to mount a defense, he calls, you guessed it, himself to the stand. He places his hand on the Bible, swears to tell the truth, and launches into an incredible story. He claims that on October 22nd, he was innocently walking outside when two men approached him. They were conveniently two white men. One's name, Matt, Raghu says. The other, he is not so sure. Maybe he heard Josh. They had guns and a plan to kidnap Saanvi. They forced Raghu at gunpoint to go to the Venna apartment with them, since he knew the family and could gain entry. Raghu spins a yarn that Matt and Josh killed Satyavathi and took Saanvi while he helplessly went along out of fear. He insists he confessed only because these mysterious kidnappers threatened to harm his wife if he didn't take the fall. As Raghu speaks, jurors glance at each other incredulously. This story does not match anything they've heard in evidence. No neighbors saw any white strangers, no DNA, no CCTV, nothing indicates Matt and Josh exist. It's a stark contrast to the mountain of proof that Raghu did it. On cross-examination, the prosecutor drills down. Mr. Yandamuri, if these men threaten your wife, why didn't you mention them the minute police finished your confession video? Why wait until after you talk to your wife to suddenly bring them up? Raghu stammers. He has no good answer. They highlight how he conveniently invoked Josh once, then dropped that name in his letter, changing details, a clear sign of fabrication. One prosecutor later described Raghu's trial testimony as science fiction. It only served to insult the jury's intelligence. Unsurprisingly, the jury needed very little time to convict. On October 8, 2014, Raghunandan Yandamuri was found guilty on all counts, 2 counts of first-degree murder, premeditated murder of Satyavathi, and felony murder for Baby Saanviand, plus kidnapping and more. Yandamuri's face betrayed no emotion as the verdict was read. Perhaps he was already strategizing his next move, or perhaps in that moment he finally understood that he had destroyed not only 2 innocent lives, but also his own. The trial then moved to the penalty phase. Life in prison or death. In Pennsylvania, this decision is made by the same jury. The prosecution argued that if any case merited the ultimate punishment, it was this one. The murder of a 10-month-old baby during a kidnapping for ransom is literally an aggravating circumstance defined in law. Killing while committing a felony. Killing a child under 12. Killing for profit. And here we had 2 victims. A grandmother who died protecting her grandchild, and the child who died terrified and alone in a sauna. They presented 4 statutory aggravating factors. And the defense, now back in the hands of professional attorneys since even Raghu realized he wasn't equipped to handle death sentencing on his own, presented mitigating factors. Raghu's lack of prior criminal record, his background, and his family's plea for mercy. In a surprising turn, at one point, Raghu told the judge that he would prefer a death sentence over life. Some speculated this was reverse psychology. Maybe he thought the jury might rebel and give him life if he appeared to want death. Or maybe he truly felt hopeless. Either way, his mother, back in India, was begging for his life. In a Telugu media interview around that time, she heartbreakingly said, "Yes, my son should be punished if he did it, but please not death. Bring him to India. Let him be in jail here." On October 14, 2014, after a few hours of deliberation, the jury delivered its final verdict. Death. They unanimously sentenced Raghunandan Yandamuri to die by lethal injection for the murders of Satyavathi and Saanvi. In that moment, Raghu became the first Indian American ever sent to death row in the United States. He was 28 years old. When the judge formally imposed the sentence a month later, he told Raghu that his crimes were unspeakable and that the jury's verdict was just. For the Venna family, it wasn't exactly cause for celebration. Nothing could bring back their loved ones. But there was a sense that justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, Saanvi's father thanked the prosecutors and police. The family, with remarkable poise, said they hoped to eventually forgive, but they needed time to heal. The aftermath of the trial saw some strange things happen. Raghu Yandamuri, now on death row, continued to file appeals on his own. In 2017, Pennsylvania Supreme Court upheld his death sentence. He tried tactics like accusing the lead detective of perjury, which a judge flatly rejected. He clashed with appellate lawyers. In one 2015 hearing, out of frustration, he blurted he'd rather be executed immediately than keep dealing with these people. The judge noted his dramatics, but these incidents illustrated Raghu's difficulty accepting that he was no longer in control of his fate. However, an execution is not likely to happen anytime soon. In 2015, a year after his sentence, Pennsylvania's governor declared a moratorium, a hold on executions, citing flaws in the system. As of today, September 2025, that moratorium still stands. In early 2018, a formal execution date was set for Raghu, February 23, 2018, but it was never carried out. Governor Tom Wolf signed a reprieve, and since then, Yandamuri has remained in the state's maximum security prison, filing post-conviction petitions. He's now 39 years old, sitting in a cell 23 hours a day, waiting on a fate that remains uncertain. From a bright kid in Vizag who lost his father and nearly lost himself, to a gambler who made a foolish, deadly plan, to a man who now has nothing but time to reflect on the lives he destroyed. In his appeals, Raghu sometimes sounds remorseful, other times he is still defensive. But one thing is certain, he will forever be haunted by the image of that little girl with the huge dark eyes, the child he was supposed to befriend and protected, his neighbor, but whom he instead left to die in a dark sauna.
If you like what we do here at Desi Studios and absolutely love what we're wearing today, this is merch you can go buy all for yourself.
You can buy this Desi Crime merch in our YouTube store on the link down below at Kadak Merch. Keep the engines at Desi Studios rolling so we can pay our videographer right behind the camera to make these amazing episodes just for you.